to the cloud. Hi, this is Anita. I'm really excited. I'm here today with Peter Chan from the BYU Hawaii Alumni Relations. Did I get that right?
You can say that alumni board. I'm on the board.
Alumni Board. Okay.
Mhm.
So Peter's actually, and this is sort of funny, I think. He does work with BYU Hawaii, but he's living in Provo, Utah, and teaches at BYU Provo. So it just goes to show that how the BYU schools, I guess, are all together in really one school, that we're all part of the same BYU system. So Peter, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do with BYU Hawaii and maybe what you do at Provo so that people just know a little bit about you.
Sure. Um, well, I was born in Guangzhou, China, and grew up in Hong Kong, and I've been in the U.S. for a long time. I graduated from BYU Hawaii with my undergraduate degree, and worked in Hong Kong a little bit, and came to Provo for my graduate studies. And after that, I returned back to BYU Hawaii as a faculty. And over there, I developed a program called Instructional Design and Development. And I was also a special assistant to the academic VP for Asia-related projects. And so I was there for 8 years. My wife also taught over there. And in 2010, we came over here to work, and I work as an adjunct faculty 3/4 time. And in the last couple of years, I have actually reduced my load in Provo. And right now, I just teach a few classes and also coordinate all the undergraduate classes in instructional psychology and technology. And my wife is also a doctorate student in the same program. And so I've been here for 16 years. And so 8 years at BYU Hawaii and 16 years as adjunct faculty in Provo. So
So do you consider yourself a full-blooded American now? Or
yeah,
do you see yourself
yeah,
more as an American Chinese?
I still speak with my Chinese accent, and
Well,
pretty
my mother
comfortable.
was Swedish, and I think saw herself as Swedish her whole life. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's interesting, you know. I've been in the US for much longer than I've been in Hong Kong, but those formative years really define who you are, and I still, very much connect to Hong Kong and China. I go there very often too, yeah, for either my own business or outside of BYU, I also have an educational consulting business. So either for my own business or for BYU or for other purposes.
I know my mother would always say, I go to Sweden and they say I'm not Swedish because I speak Swedish with
Yeah,
an American accent. I go to America and I speak English with the Swedish accent, so I really don't belong anywhere.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, those of us who have been like in between cultures, we kind of feel like that. But hey, that is also our advantage too. You know, we
Yes.
can go to like that's something I always like to do. I want to bring China and the U.S. closer to each other. Sometimes, if you're just looking at the news, it seems like the two countries have so much conflicts. They are about to start a war, but then when you are actually bringing the people together, they can be very close to each other, and I always find that to be inspiring to bring people together.
Yeah, and it's true that, as a global community, we have far more in common than we
That's right.
have not in common, I think.
Yeah,
That we as people have so much more in common if we just look to find what we have in common.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
well, what a journey you've had in your life.
yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about, I know that BYU Hawaii is sort of your passion. I kind of feel that from you, and helping the students at BYU Hawaii is sort of your passion. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and why that's your passion?
Well, BYU Provo is my passion too. You know, go cool.
Okay.
You know, look at our football games nowadays. The
Oh, look at
football
the
games.
Cougars are doing
Oh,
so good this year, right?
oh, wow. You know, basketball and football and everything. And so I'm very
I
proud
heard today
to,
that
to,
they
to,
might have
to
to
be here
rename
too.
Bear Lake Bear Backmeyer.
That's great. I support that. Yeah. But yes, I have been very engaged with BYU Hawaii, and just mainly because that's really our starting points, my starting point. Yeah, I joined the church when I was 16 in Hong Kong, and I often said the gospel of Jesus Christ inspire us, give us hope for eternal happiness. But it's education that brought us out of generational poverty. Both my wife and I come from very humble circumstances, and but because of the educational opportunities that BYU Hawaii offered to us, it really brought us up, to a much higher level that if I had stayed in Hong Kong, I wouldn't have had that educational opportunities. And once I have that educational background, that I can do a lot more things in life. And today, I have been teaching in higher ed forever. Now, I taught for 6 years at the Chinese University of Hong Kong too, as an adjunct faculty over there. I remember when I was teaching there, I was teaching a master's degree program, and at times when I was walking around the campus, I thought without BYU Hawaii, I wouldn't have had a higher ed degree, and if I had stayed in Hong Kong, I probably wouldn't have been able to enter that university as a student, not to say being a faculty member teaching the master's students, and so Chinese say Cantonese say 饮水思源, when you drink of the water, you think of from where the water comes. And so we need to be grateful for what we receive. And so now that I am closer to the end of my professional life, I want to shift my gear, less on finding money, more on service, and try to provide more service to students who were like us before, and try to find ways to get them internships, experiential learning opportunities, and find ways to help the university, and in other words, really helping the church in Asia and Pacific to grow more. Yeah, my effort is limited, but I'm trying.
Well, and I think too for our listeners, I don't know if you know the statistic, but I do know from my staff and others in China that, getting a higher education in places like China and Hong Kong is not a given.
Yeah,
It's actually extremely competitive to get into a good
very,
university. It's
absolutely.
very, very tough, and only the best of the brightest get in. And if you don't have money, it's even harder to get in because you're lacking the education.
Yeah,
So a program like BYU Hawaii's iWork that helps out the members is really, in many ways, a godsend or a blessing for them
yeah,
because their chance to get an education in China
yeah.
or even Hong Kong would be quite difficult. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the college degree has really become a basic educational requirement for many of the higher level executive jobs. It doesn't mean that when you graduate, you get those type of jobs. But in order to move up from the bottom, to reach those jobs, you do need that type of education. And not only is it difficult to get into those some institutions, but even for those who have the opportunity, the ability to get into those universities back home in Asia, I would still encourage members of the church. They have the caliber, to do well, to consider going to a church university, because when you go to a place like BYU Hawaii, you really have that multicultural experience in a gospel-centered environment, and so you can see how the gospel of Jesus Christ can be applied in a professional world. And I think that is a very powerful combination. That in the word of David O. McKay, he said the world is hungry for people like that, people who are principled, who have the ability to make a difference, who want to make a difference more than just earning money. And so I think that's what the university is about.
Oh, that's great. I mean, and that's great. And we love, what you're doing with BYU Hawaii and how BYU Hawaii is trying to raise up the lives and standards of many of these people who otherwise would not have the opportunity. And also, I think the church's pathway program is fabulous in what they're doing with that and education. And you touched upon a bit about how education's so important. I'm a great believer in that too, that
Yeah.
there's nothing like getting a good education.
Hmm.
One of the reasons why I have you on, and people might say, "No, this is a BYU Management Society podcast." And recently, BYU Hawaii Alumni Relations and BYU Management Society were really trying to collaborate together. And maybe you could touch a bit on that, of how you feel a little bit about collaborating together with an association like the BYU Management Society.
Wow, I feel passionate about our collaboration. I'm so glad that you are devoting so much of your time doing podcasts and doing so many things behind the scene. What you have accomplished, Anita, with the Management Society is really incredible. I look at all the things that you guys are doing, especially in Asia. I really admire it and really appreciate it. And I'm grateful that you are willing to work with me, work with the
Oh,
BYU
no, we
Hawaii
love it.
alumni relations, and because you see our universities, there's the five institutions: BYU, BYU Hawaii, BYU Idaho, BYU Pathway, and Ensign College. If you look a little higher, we all have the same purposes in helping to build the individuals in the church, to help build up the church. And BYU Hawaii is unique in this church educational system, as the only one that has a geographical focus on Asia and the Pacific. And so it is very important to BYU Hawaii that we help build up our students, our graduates who are in these areas, and also recruiting more students from these areas too. But the challenge for BYU Hawaii is that its resources is so limited. It has only 3,000 students. Imagine if you are, in the career services at BYU Hawaii, you have students that come from the 60 different countries. Now, just looking at the countries, people think that, oh, that's no big deal. Every other university in America have students from all over the place. Well, what they usually means is that they have just a small number sample of these students from other countries. But at BYU Hawaii, with the 3,000 students, you have one-fifth of them from Philippines, 400 from Tonga. I don't know how many hundreds from different other countries in Asia and Pacific. And so if you are career services, you are trying to help find jobs and internships for students from the Philippines, and also from Japan, and from Tonga, and from US mainland. How do you do that? It's very
It's
difficult.
very difficult,
Yeah,
and because it's so much of it's with connections, right? So you really have to
that's
be
right.
able to connect in with people.
Yeah, well, even when you have those connections, how do you manage that?
Yeah,
And those are all the
right,
big range of variety, and they have only three full-time staffs. Yeah, and and I also noticed at BYU Management Society, you have a great network of support and also resources, and this upcoming conference that you're doing in a couple of weeks in
yeah,
Taiwan,
right.
um, that the budget for that conference is really the same size of the entire budget for the alumni office at BYU Hawaii for the whole year, and so when you are allowing us to use some of the resources that you have, we are very grateful for it. But we also have some unique resources that I think we can contribute to this partnership. And you have the professional, the financial, resources, but we also have the human resources for the locals. Yeah. When
Right.
you go to these countries in Asia Pacific, you notice that a lot of the local church leaders, the local graduates who are really staying there, they are BYU Hawaii graduates.
That's
The
right.
expats, expats like yourself, you are in Vietnam, they are
Mm.
often BYU Provo graduates,
Right.
so they tie more to the management society. And so if our purpose is to help build up the local communities, I think it is absolutely essential that these two organizations work closely together. And I would love to see us being one in everything we do.
And it can work because recently, I don't know if you read this article, but the new stake in Mongolia, the stake
Yeah,
president, both counselors are BYU Hawaii graduates.
that's
And I
right.
wrote to a friend of mine at BYU Hawaii and I said, well, now that we've done this, we need to repeat that process throughout Asia.
That's right.
Where the BYU Hawaii graduates are coming back and they're leading and they're being, an essential part of not just the community and business, but also the church in these countries.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, absolutely. Yeah, and like sometimes when we have church leaders, yeah, who are in the local areas, they will also appreciate opportunities that are professional in nature too.
Right.
What I mean is that last month, well, no, 2 months ago, in August, we did a conference in Hong Kong, yeah, and the Management Society also supported us. We call that the Professional Development Conference organized by the Alumni Association. So we have the conference was hosted in the church headquarters in Hong Kong, and we had all kinds of professional presentations. And many of the people who presented, they are church leaders. But then for many of the people in the church, they said, we have been in the church for so long, we know these folks for so many years, but this is the first time we hear them talking about professional things, AI and business developments,
Right.
retirements, and things like that.
Right.
Even though, for these individuals, they may have done that a whole lot, every week, outside of the church, but they have never had this type of opportunity to present to a church audience. And so when we do that, we really tap into the resources, the human resources that we have in the church to benefit each other. And people
Right.
find that to be very, very and enlightening, and they want more of it.
Well, like last week we had that webinar with Jared Anderson that
Yeah,
gave a great webinar about AI.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like there again, tapping into human resources. He works for
yeah,
Microsoft and Copilot and
yeah,
what great insights about AI that
yeah,
he gave us. And we,
yeah,
we want to do more of that this coming year with some of our boot camp series that we're doing throughout BYU MS Asia that we'll do in conjunction with BYU Hawaii and hope to get more joining from the alumni there.
yeah,
Well,
yeah. Please do.
I really, Peter, we really appreciate you and your enthusiasm with the Management Society, and we
Same
appreciate.
here. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you,
You are
thank
like
you.
working full time for free, for the management
Yeah, yeah.
society. So,
So we're both
so
we're
we
both like
really,
volunteers here. So
yeah,
if we
yeah,
make any mistakes, you guys have to forgive us because we're volunteers.
that's
But
right.
but we really do, I just want to thank you for helping us get into BYU Hawaii and to hopefully, collaborate, doing this collaboration and joining together. And I hope those that are out there listening that might be BYU Hawaii grads that you'll come join with us. Um,
Yes.
you know, either through the Alumni Association somehow join with us because we're all together, we're one. And we hope that you'll join with us in whatever programs we do, that you'll be part of it and join and learn. And I just want to make one final comment. In this age of AI, I think this is more important than ever.
Yes. Yes.
We're in an
Yeah.
AI revolution.
That's right. Yeah, with all the connectivities that we have today, and the whole world is becoming one in terms of the professional collaborations, and
Right.
I'm grateful that the events that you are doing now, the activities that you are doing now, also carry that BYU Hawaii logo, and so
Thank
it
you.
makes it easier for us to share that. Hey guys, come on over. Look, this is sponsored by our alumni association, alumni relations, and so come on over, and so easier to communicate that
Well,
to them.
we will continue to collaborate. So Thank you so much, Peter, for your time today and joining with us here in our little podcast and introducing our listeners a little bit to BYU Hawaii and what you guys are doing there, and a little bit to the Alumni Association and our collaboration. So I truly do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I will say mahalo and aloha.
Mahalo. Mahalo and aloha, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Or shishini and zaijian.
再见，再见。OK，拜拜。
Okay. They just-